And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook on this Sunday, May 11th, 2025. We start with the state of the sea ice this Sunday afternoon, and we find the ice dispersing and melting off rather rapidly now across the central and northern portion of the Bering Sea. And with the stronger area of low pressure coming up west of the Pribilovs, that's going to only agitate this ice more with stronger east-southeast winds, at least areas off the Yukon Delta and Nunavik Island. This low by late tonight, early Monday morning, 978 millibars. That's a rather strong low for this time of year in May. We have a front that's pushed northeastward that'll bring rain and gusty winds. There is a high surf advisory for the area of the Kuskokwim Delta Monday morning and Monday early afternoon. Surf levels could run 1 to 2 feet above the normal highest tide. This front will continue working its way across south central Anchorage Bowl with rain, and eventually the front will pull up toward the Panhandle Monday night into Tuesday morning, bringing additional showers there. And the low just sits out Monday afternoon out through the central Bering with the front arcing ahead. As I said, we'll see more rain pushing into the Panhandles as we get into Monday night and for Tuesday morning. Colder air dropping southeastward across northwest Canada will kind of bypass the southern portions of the state. And then on Tuesday, we have this weakening occluded front more or less into a trough that subdivides at least the areas along and south of the Alaska Range. There is the potential for some accumulating snow up through areas of the Alaska Range later Monday night and early Tuesday morning. And yet another low trying to come up out of the North Pacific Tuesday afternoon, but it won't be as strong or have as large of a wind field as the one that went up into the Bering this weekend. So for the inner channels, we're looking at a variable wind field. South winds 20 knots, Lynn Canal 4-foot waves. North winds 10 knots within Stevens Passage. Northwest winds coming down here into Dixon Entrance. For the outer coast, Sitka down to Craig, we are looking at 20 to 25 knot northwesterly winds with gusts to 35 knots. More westerly winds around 20 knots or so once you get up along the coast up outside of Yakutat to Cape Suckling. And for Tuesday, we're looking at south winds 25 knots within Lynn Canal, south winds 15 knots within Stevens Passage, northwest winds at about 20 knots there for Dixon Entrance. And for the outer coast, winds are generally out of the west around 20 to 25 knots off of Prince of Wales Island to outside of the Icy Strait, and then up here toward Cape Suckling, winds 10 to 15 knots. For areas Monday inside of Hinchinbrook Entrance, east winds 20 knots there at Prince William Sound, but east-southeast winds to 25 knots outside of Hinchinbrook. And then along the coast, southeast winds in Kenai Peninsula. Southwest winds, though, in Lower Cook Inlet to 25 knots with waves running around 5 feet. As that front lifts northeastward and further north inland, we expect south-southwest flow along Cook Inlet around 15 knots, southwest flow 20 knots off the Kenai, and a 10-knot variable wind within Prince William Sound with waves there a couple of feet. Winds will be southwesterly across Kodiak Island on Monday, 25 to 30 knots. Otherwise, south-southwest winds around 30 to as high as 35 knots either side of the lower end of the Alaska Peninsula at Cold Bay and False Pass. And on Tuesday, southwest winds 25 or 20 knots around Kodiak Island. Otherwise, southeast winds as high as 30, 35 knots off of Sand Point, and generally southeast winds from Bristol Bay down to north of Cold Bay on the Bering side at 20 to 25 knots. We have a strong low located up here in the central Bering. Southwesterly 40-knot gale force winds across the eastern and central Aleutians from Unalaska through Nikolsky, Atka. Get west of Adak, winds will be more west-northwest 30 to 25 knots. And then on Tuesday, we're looking at south-southeast winds across the eastern Aleutians, 20 to 25 knots. A bit of a northerly winds there, 20, 25 knots around Atka. And then as we get further west of Adak, generally northwest winds around 15 to 20 knots. For the southwest coast, we have that high surf advisory Monday morning and early afternoon here within Kuskokwim Bay. Surf could run 1 to 2 feet above normal with southerly winds of 30 knots, some higher gusts to perhaps 40, 45 knots. And then Back out to the west, the low center there just west of St. Matthew, 40-knot easterly gales at St. Matthew, while winds shift southwesterly in the Pribilofs at 35-knot gales with waves to 16 feet. Offshore southeast to east flow 25 to 30 knots along the lower Yukon coast and out of Norton Sound. And then for Tuesday, southeast winds 20 to 25 knots within Bristol and Kuskokwim bays. We have southeast winds 20 to 25 knots along the lower Yukon Delta and a 20-knot easterly wind out of Norton Sound. South winds still there around the Pribilofs at 30 knots with waves up to 14 feet. And then as we drop on down through the Bering Strait, west side of Seward Peninsula and north side of St. Lawrence Island, we are looking at easterly winds of 20 to as high as 35 knots there at Savunga and Gamble. As we go up along the Chukchi Sea coast, generally easterly winds as high as 30 knots out of Kotzebue Sound and off of Cape Lisburne. And then along the Beaufort Sea coast, easterly winds 15 knots, coming down as to what they had been over the weekend. And then on Tuesday, winds will tick back up to about 20 knots along the Beaufort Sea coast and as high as 25 knots off of Wainwright. And then down through the lower Chukchi Sea on Tuesday, we anticipate east winds at 15 knots. And then finally, offshore flow of 20-knot easterly winds along the Seward Peninsula, Wales down to Port Clarence and Nome. And then on the north side of St. Lawrence Island, Tuesday, winds will be easterly at 25 knots.